was your solar panels.
Way to go.
Water. I'm delighted to be here. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about me and about Fresh Energy, and then I'm going to talk about where we're at with global warming and policies to fix it, and what I think Minnesota needs to do in the absence of congressional action. First, I'm going to pass a couple things out just so that I can get them off my table here. If you don't already have this document from the Union of Concerned Scientists, Confronting Climate Change in the Midwest, What Global Warming Could Mean for Minnesota and Surrounding States, you should definitely be familiar with it. The word from scientists is that if we don't address global warming and climate change, very soon, by the middle of this century, every summer in Minnesota, statistically, will be hotter than the hottest summer on record. And that summer was not 1936, but was 1988, according to the state climatologist. So I certainly remember that summer, and probably most of you in this room remember that summer. Every summer statistically hotter than that. So it's not something just that our grandchildren have to deal with, it is something we will need to be responsible for as well. And thank you, Steve, too. He's passing around the Fresh Energy newsletter as well.
That's okay.
That's great. And so please take them home. If you need to contact me afterwards, you'll be able to find our website and our contact information going forward. And then the final thing I brought along for people, if they'd like, a Fresh Energy refrigerator magnet, if you'd also like our website.
All right. So tell you what, we'll leave
that's
those
the last of my goodies. Thank you, Steve, for your help. So first, by way of introduction, I'm very, very pleased to be here. My husband was able to come up with me to here to the end of the road to the, what is it, the coolest small town in America now. And he's out snorkeling today, seeing what he can see in these low light conditions. He's an avid snorkeler. And we are both really touched to be here because we both work on clean energy and global warming, and this is the type of beautiful place and setting that is at great risk from climate change. So it is at the heart of why we do what we do, that we are interested in protecting against that risk, and we're interested in creating a clean energy future for Minnesota and the Midwest and the country. I hope the most challenging part of my presentation will be my weird name. And that's always good to explain where that came from. The J is short for Janet. J is a nickname I got in college, and it suits me really well. So please, you can call me Jay. Drake is my maiden name, and Hamilton is my husband. I've told him that if I marry again, I'm just going to keep adding names on, so it'll get even more confusing. So never intended it to be a confusing name, but people call me Jay. And I run the Global Warming Solutions Program at Fresh Energy. As Steve described it, we're a private nonprofit. We happen to be based in downtown St. Paul, but we work throughout the Midwestern region. We work on energy policy, and clean energy policy. So we call ourselves policy wonks or a policy shop. We were actually formed by a group of 60 Minnesota citizens way back, now what looks like way back in 1990. Leading citizens got together for a retreat out on the St. Croix River. These were people who some of them were scientists, some of them were parents and grandparents, some of them were in the clean energy business, some of them worked for government, and even then they were concerned that Minnesota had no fossil fuels and an energy system and a very extreme climate that was heavily based on fossil fuels, and no plan to move forward, no energy policy plan to get us away from that dire situation. And what they decided, to their credit, was that even then, Minnesota had a lot of environmental groups. Minnesota didn't just need another environmental group, but they needed a group that was focused on energy policy advocacy. So changing the rules and getting strong laws at the state and federal level, and that's what we do. And we divide our work in 3 programs. As I mentioned, I run our Global Warming Solutions Program. We also have a Clean Transportation Program and a Clean Efficient Energy Program. So we work in 3 programmatic areas. And everyone on staff is happy to talk to anyone around Minnesota at any time with good ideas and how we can help out. And we do a little bit of, we're able to do a little bit of outreach around the state of Minnesota like this. Primarily during the legislative session, we try to be at the state capitol or state agencies, a little bit getting in their face, trying to get, again, those strong laws passed. And most recently, the action on climate change has been at the federal level. So I know I've been in Washington 6 times in the last year, which is unusual for us. But it's been in the House of Representatives and in the U.S. Senate where the decisions either are being made or should be being made. And so we need to be in those venues as well. I'm going to start off with a brief depiction of where we're at on this issue of climate change, and then I want to talk more about where we need to be. I'm going to quote directly first from the scientists, because The group of people who's probably most with us in wanting to address these risks, reduce these risks responsibly, and take the set of actions that's not only going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also grow clean energy jobs, make us more energy efficient, make us less reliant on foreign countries for oil, are the scientists, the climate scientists. And I happen to come out of a climatology program at the University of Minnesota, so I know how climate scientists think. And I also know that they're a very reticent group. Scientists in general would much rather be doing their science. Peter Reich, who's a friend of mine, is coming next week. I'm sure he would much rather be in the woods or in the lab than be in dry legislative conference rooms. Most scientists would prefer never to talk to the media. Anyone who's done any scientific research who has been quoted in the media probably has had the experience of being misquoted or having their language totally subverted by the media and misunderstood. And they really don't like talking to politicians, for the most part, because they, like most Americans, don't trust politicians, don't really know what they're about, feel like they're totally divorced from what the scientific enterprises that they're involved in. But if scientists could be depicted as jumping up and down and pulling out their hair, telling us to do something, that is what the climate science community is doing now. It doesn't appear that way to most of us, but that's the way it appears from the inside. They think that there is a set of enormous risks that we are putting ourselves up for. And I'm saying ourselves. Often people refer to this as about our grandchildren. We're leading ourselves into that are steps that we don't need to take. We can make better choices. I'm just going to quote from the National Academy of Sciences, who came out with this statement in May of this year, so just a couple of months ago. And this is always something that's good to start out. I know any radio interview I give or anytime I get a chance to talk to policymakers, just to be clear, always to reiterate that climate change is real. So from the scientists, from the National Academy, climate change is occurring, is caused largely by human activities, and in many cases is already affecting a broad range of human and natural systems. There is an urgent need for United States action. This is a really strong statement on the part of scientists. May 2010 wasn't the first time they came out with that statement. They've been saying it for years. In fact, when I look back at my lecture notes from when I first studied climatology back in college, back in the 1980s, I can find almost verbatim the same climate change science, the basic physics and chemistry of the atmosphere from the 1980s. And so we've known about this, and scientists have known about this problem for a long, long time. So setting aside the scientists, what else is going on in the world? It happened that in April of this year, Earth Month, ironically, we had the worst coal mine disaster in 40 years. 29 people killed in a coal mine in West Virginia, which was certainly proof positive that our reliance on fossil fuels here in places like Minnesota and most of the country is actually literally killing people. Not 2 weeks later, there was the explosion in the Gulf of Mexico. We know that it is the worst industry-caused environmental disaster we've ever seen. We don't know yet the full array of what that disaster will play out to. We know that it's an ecological disaster. And interestingly, we're also hearing reports from the people who work in the Gulf that it's also a jobs disaster. I think now that NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, has closed fishing in the Gulf in about 20–25% of the Gulf. So when people talk about our decisions, future energy jobs, clean energy jobs, they should also look at future jobs that are at risk from our over-reliance and lack of care with fossil fuels like coal and oil. So scientists have been telling us for a long time that something's going on. These fossil fuel disasters are hitting us over the head that something needs to change going forward. Starting in 2007, we had businesses start taking action on climate at the federal level. And they were actually cluing in on things like what Governor Tim Pawlenty was doing here in Minnesota. Because in 2007, he convened Chuck Dayton and myself and Peter Reich and 53 other Minnesotans on a Minnesota Climate Change Advisory Group. Because in 2007,